Ladies and gentlemen, in this RedGaming.com video we have further information on the AMD Jaguar CPU, which of course lies at the heart of not only the PS4 but also Microsoft's Xbox One. Now, this is a follow-up video to the previous video that I've already put out. The previous video was basically going over the specifications. Now, at the time, much of that stuff hadn't been 100% confirmed, but now it is, basically, so there's no point in me just re-going over that stuff. I will inevitably go over some of it again here, just to get us all up to date, and because, well, I have to naturally to talk about the video. So if you're not 100% sure, I'd suggest you go up to the channel and search AMD Jaguar, and much of this stuff will have already been covered in terms of the specs. But as I said, if you don't want to do that and you just want to stick around, we will be having a quick recap at the start of this video before we go into the performance and so on. So, first things first, what is the AMD Jaguar? The AMD Jaguar itself is a evolution of sorts from the previous architecture known as AMD Bobcat. Now, Jaguar is available in two configurations as standard. One is a 2-core and the second is a 4-core. Now, I know what you're going to say, but what about the PS4? For example, it has 8 cores. Well, that's true. That's actually a custom configuration, from Sony and Microsoft, because they've both got 8 cores, and basically all that is two CPU modules welded together, if you will, and there you have it. And that's the 8 cores, but we'll go more into that later on. Now, it's very important to note that these parts themselves are actually low power parts, by which it means that they have low thermal output, low wattage requirements, and also means that cooling is not too difficult. Now, when you consider the size of consoles now, it's no surprising that Microsoft went, as well as Sony of course, went for this design, as well as the APU as well was heavily influencing their decision. It also turns out the parts are quite cheap. Now, if you want more details on exactly how all of this came together, I suggest you watch another one of my videos which basically explains why they put together consoles the way they do. Something, I believe the title was something like "Why do console manufacturers choose the parts they choose?" or something like that. But anyway, now the AMD Bobcat, as I said, was the Jaguar's predecessor, but there have been a number of changes on this sucker. Both the AMD Jaguar for the Xbox One and PS4 are using shared level 2 cache. That's 2 megabytes per module. As I said, that's shared, so it's shared between the 4 cores. This is a major improvement from Bobcat, which actually had the same amount of level 2 cache, but it was 512 KB per core. But the thing is, now, because it's obviously unified, it allows much better distribution. You've also got much better IPC or instructions per clock. Bobcat was actually a little bit slow in that respect. Now, it's also extremely important to figure out the clock speeds. Now, clock speeds are really difficult to ascertain because neither AMD, Sony, or Microsoft themselves have actually given a hint of what they could be. But around the 1.6 gigahertz range is likely to be the speed, because for example, although 2 gigahertz is the maximum that they can run at, that would actually require a 66% increase in TDP, which is obviously bad. It's worthy to note that there are rumours that the Xbox One is actually suffering from heat issues. The Xbox One SoC actually has a few changes from the AMD Jaguar of the PS4. Specifically, it's a little bit more complicated. I'm not sure if it's actually larger. They haven't really said. I assume we'll know more when we can actually open up both consoles and compare a lot of the innards side by side. But as far as we understand it, they're actually putting out more heat. The reason for this is because of the move engines inside the SoC of the Xbox One, as well as the ES RAM, which of course is all there to try and make up for the lack of DDR5 that the PS4 has, in other words, memory bandwidth. Now, there are a couple of benchmarks floating around the internet But there are a few things we have to really start to take note of before we jump into this. The first is that looking at blogs of developers and interviews with developers, they've actually said that the PS4's CPU as well as Xbox One, I'm just going to say PS4 if it means both of them just to make life simple, but they've basically said that the PS4 CPU is not really directly comparable to the benchmark models for one reason, and that is that basically there is no overhead really with operating system compatibilities as in drivers and so forth. Therefore they can roughly get twice the performance out of it as what you would if it was in a PC. Secondly, there is another little overhead as well, and that is OS. Now, if you were to look at the Killzone post-mortem video that I've got, you could also check out the video as well on redgamertech.com, you'll notice that it basically turns out that two CPUs right now are being cordoned off. Now, each CPU core can handle one hardware thread. This is very different, of course, to, say, the cell processor, which can handle two threads for the main core and then each SPU as well, or the Xbox 360 CPU, which can handle 6 threads with 3 cores, so that's 2 threads each. The AMD Jaguar doesn't do that, it handles 1 thread per core, which, as it turns out as well, is also pretty good for cache and a few other bits and pieces that we'll go into possibly later on. So one of the issues with the Xbox One and the PS4 is that there are between 1 to 2 CPUs that are basically cordoned off, that they are not usable by games developers. Now, the reason for this is so that the operating system can function. You've got to remember that both of these consoles have quite a lot of bells and whistles, such as video encoding, such as being able to browse the internet and whatever else simultaneously, as it turns out, from being able to play the game that you're playing. Now, the reason behind all of this is to make the gameplay seamless. In other words, so that if you wish to do something, answer something, you don't have to drop out from dashboard. Bear in mind, there is a very specific reason for this. It's because that if a games developer has allocated certain resources to the game, they could just gobble up everything and cause the system to crash out or bug out or slow the hell down, which is, well, sucky for everyone. So, it turns out that we don't know exactly how much CPU time is being taken up with the OS. Right now, in the Killzone post-mortem, you can see that Gorilla have actually said that they're using 6 threads. So that's CPU 0 all the way up to 5, which obviously gives you a total of 6, out of the possible 8. So we're not sure if that's saying, okay, there are 2 remaining for OS functionality, or if Sony have just said, we're not really sure what we're going to be doing yet in terms of how much we're going to need and cordon off. Therefore, we suggest you guys work with 6 as a safety precaution. It's a fairly good bet. The Microsoft are going to be in no better boat because, as you guys are probably aware, they're actually using 3 OSs on their Xbox One, which means that they've likely got very high memory requirements and very high CPU requirements. We're not sure exactly what the memory requirements are of either. Likelihood is we won't find that out until 6 months after launch. The reason I say that is because then, by that point, coders can start taking apart the console and start figuring out exactly what's being mapped to what memory. It's also worth noting that Nintendo themselves have said that they're going to release an update as soon as possible once they've got better understanding of the graphical libraries and so forth of the Wii, and in theory it should allow more memory to be usable by games, because currently they've got 2 GB in the Wii U, but only 1 GB is available to the games. Now, in my previous analysis of the tech, before of course we had, well, let's just say we actually had the CPUs available, what I was basically doing was using technology from the previous generation, AMD Bobcat, and using that as an example, and pretty much improving it by factoring maybe 15 to 20% performance gains, maybe 30% performance gains for my PC, as well as the extra cores. Now, obviously, that was not exactly accurate. But as it turns out, it was pretty damn close. But I wanted, as I said, to produce this video just to clarify things, because a few people said, well, you know, how accurate was that and so forth. So it's actually fairly accurate, as it turns out. I was talking about, say, the AMD E350. Now, these are using a test called Passmark. That is PASS mark, and you can freely get that completely free benchmarking software. Anyway, I assumed that once again all the AMD cores would be used 100% fully, and we basically took that benchmark and said that, okay, let's see how well that works. So we basically got a score of a mid-3000s, which is roughly a little bit slower than the Intel i3 2100, which is now very slow, by the way. So then I decided to compare that to a little bit faster, which was the Sandy Bridge i5 2500K at default clock speed, and it was around double the speed. In another example, I pretty much took the same figures, so I took the E350, multiplied it by the requisite amount of cores, added in the improved IPC, and I was using 3D Mark 06 as a benchmark for this, which is a CPU test, and basically came up with a score of 1041 compared to an Athlon 7850 BE score of 2210. Now, in case you guys are not 100% sure on this, you can by all means search. Now, the thing with these scores, of course, is that once again we are doing some level of guesswork. So the question is, how in actuality does it do with, well, real life scenarios, with modern day CPUs? Well, we're going to use a couple. You can use one from, say, Tom's Hardware or Anantech. There are tons of these different reviews around, so I'm not going to bother to mention all of them. But suffice to say, the A4 5000 Kabini in Handbrake, which is multi-threaded, bear in mind they're only using 4 cores, however, gets an encoding time of around 10 minutes, 28 seconds. Compare that to an i3 Ivy Bridge, that would be a model number of the 3217U. It gets an encoding time of 7 minutes 37, which is obviously a hell of a lot better because it's faster. Cinebench, quite similarly, thrashes the results of the Kabini. If you go multi-threaded, which obviously we're always going to be going multi-threaded since there's no point looking at single-threaded performance, you can see that it's 1 minute 11 on the Kabini compared to, I'm sorry, not 1 minute 11, 1.11 points compared to 1.81 points. Actually, we can actually look at single-threaded just for a moment, just to give us an idea of what the IPC is like in terms of efficiencies. And you're looking at 0.37 for the Kabini versus 0.76 on the i3. Now, once again, is the i3 3217U. So what exactly is this processor, the Intel i3? Well, there's actually got 2 cores, but they're hyper-threaded. So each core is capable of basically performing 2 threads. Similarly, if you were to look at the compiling time for Google Chrome, which is scripted using Visual Studio 2010, in using the Kabini, this is multi-threaded of course, it's 2 hours and 6 minutes, just a few seconds under actually if you want me to be precise, and the i3 meanwhile clocks in at 1 hour 27 minutes. Now, I could keep going on like this for a while, but I'm not going to bother because it's frankly pointless. This basically illustrates the fact that, once again, the processors are not high-end. They are effectively low-end, low-power processors which are meant to be used in small devices and so forth. It is the APU nature of the processors, of the APUs, which is really going to be the thing that gives the performance, because obviously the GPU can aid in compute tasks, such as physics and so forth. It is worth noting that from what we understand from the Killzone document, and to be fair, it was actually quite thorough. Obviously, they probably didn't reveal every single thing, but they certainly revealed quite a lot. And from what we understand, the only thing that the GPU was actually doing, other than graphics, of course, was actually memory defragmentation in terms of compute, which is pretty damn impressive, really. So it actually shows that the PS4 does have a very bright future ahead. Just to reiterate as well, the developers of Metro 2033 and Last Light have also said that these results aren't exactly accurate, because once again you can get a lot more out of a console. However, just how many cores are going to be available for games is still unknown. Obviously, it does have a very large amount of memory. So does that mean that consoles aren't as powerful as PC? Yes, it does, if you want a black and white answer. Is that a bad thing? Not really. The fact that it is x64, x86, and x64 is a very good thing for PCs, and it does mean that we're going to get a hell of a lot better, much more robust ports, which is always a good thing. In terms of code and code efficiency, there's going to be a hell of a lot of room for improvement as well. And I have no doubt, I mean, you guys have seen the trailers, right, for the PS4 stuff. Or I say PS4 stuff because, to be honest, we haven't really seen enough of the Xbox One stuff. But it's impressive. You know, I am a hardcore PC gamer, I'm not going to lie to you guys. But I really want the PS4 because of Killzone and Infamous. I would be honest, I would probably buy the console if that was all there was, all they were out on the system on launch, because I really am a huge fan of Infamous. I love Infamous series, and I was actually really impressed with what I saw. And this is just an example. I'm going to leave you guys with a few more thoughts. Look at what the PS4's cell processor is capable of. The PS4 cell processor, of course, helps with a hell of a lot when it comes to The Last of Us, or any of the PS3 games specifically, actually, because they get the SPUs to do a lot more than just simply help with bits of code. It can help with anti-aliasing, it could help with data processing, moving data around, for example, and so on and so forth. So we're going to be seeing a lot. I'm not sure how long the consoles are going to be able to compete with high-end PCs. In fact, they probably won't in terms of pure computational power. We obviously know that the AMD Jaguar itself has, we've been really looking at the CPU functionality in this. Obviously that's not 100% fair because they are designed as an APU unit, but I wanted to focus on the CPU functionality because, once again, I've created a previous video and I just wanted to add in these extra results, kind of a well, just for completeness sake. Actually, I'll probably update or maybe make a second web page on this as well, second article, shall I say, just to, for completeness sake, and I can add in all of the relevant links for you guys as well, so you can check those out. I'd like to do that, and it's crap doing it in the description because you can't add in images as well. So what I'll be doing is probably that over the next couple of days. Obviously, we do have a lot of stuff coming up for E3, so I guess I'll just have to see how I can fit it in. So yeah. In terms of the GPU, obviously, we know a hell of a lot about it because it is technology that has existed for a long time. In other words, you know, we've already got the same graphics systems basically in our PCs at home. So it's very easy to know exactly what that is. And besides, a G-flop is a G-flop is a G-flop. And obviously we know the PS4 is capable of about 1.84, which is pretty damn impressive really for a console. We'll just have to see what that can really mean, because you've got to bear in mind that PC figures are a lot harder to get everything out of, because obviously as the developers become a lot more proficient with their use, well, you guys get the message. So I guess we'll just have to see. Anyway, that should just about clear up this. Any last questions over the AMD Jaguar, I hope. I think I've just about answered everything I've got in the mail anyway. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and see me soon. Take care, and bye for now.